Imagine leaving your child with a trusted nanny for just a few hours, only to get a video that chills you to the core. Something's not right, and what seemed like a normal day turns into a nightmare. What would you do if you saw your child acting strangely, but he wasn't acting like himself? Subscribe now for more real-life horror stories. And don't forget to hit the like button if you're getting chills down your spine. It was supposed to be a typical day. I had a meeting to attend and had to leave my son, Jake, with our nanny, Rachel. She had been with us for a few months now, and I had no reason to think anything would go wrong. Rachel was polite, professional, and had a great track record. She made me feel comfortable leaving my son in her care. As I pulled out of the driveway, I gave Jake a quick hug and kiss. "See you later, buddy," I said, waving as I walked out the door. He waved back, a smile on his face, and I drove off. I tried not to think too much about it. I was busy with work, checking my emails, going through reports, nothing out of the ordinary. Every now and then, I checked my phone just to make sure everything was fine at home. A few quick texts came in from Rachel. "All good, he's napping now," she'd written at 1:15 p.m. Then, at 2:30, "We're playing a little game. All is well." It was a kind of mundane exchange I was used to. Nothing about it made me suspicious or worried. But as the hours passed, I started to get this odd feeling in my gut. Maybe it was just the stress from work, but something didn't feel right. It was around 4 p.m. when I got the first unsettling message. I had just wrapped up my meeting and was about to head home when I saw a notification on my phone. It was from Rachel. "Hey, everything's fine, but Jake is acting a little weird. He's been standing in the corner of the room, staring at the wall for a few minutes. Not sure what's going on." I paused. Jake was a pretty active kid, always running around, playing and making noise. For him to just stand still like that was strange. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was just tired, or maybe he was caught up in his own thoughts. I quickly shot Rachel a text back. "Is he okay? Should I come home?" She replied almost immediately, "He's fine." He started playing again right after that. Just thought it was a bit odd. "Don't worry." I was reassured for a moment, but that strange feeling in my gut didn't go away. I decided to call her just to make sure everything's fine. Rachel picked up quickly. "Hey, what's up?" "Hey, I just saw your text. Is everything okay with Jake? Standing in the corner, that seems a little odd." "Oh, yeah, I totally get it," she said with a nervous laugh. "He's fine now. Honestly, it was probably nothing. Kids do weird stuff sometimes. It's no big deal." I tried to brush it off, but something about her voice didn't sound entirely convincing. There was an edge to it, something I couldn't put my finger on. "Well, just make sure he's okay," I said, trying to sound casual. "Of course. I'll keep an eye on him," Rachel assured me. I hung up, but I still felt uneasy. I told myself that everything was fine and that maybe I was just overthinking things. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A little over an hour later, I received another notification. This time it was from Rachel, but it wasn't a text. It was a video. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. As soon as it started, my heart sank. The video showed Jake standing in the corner of the living room. His back was to the camera, but I could see his small form. He wasn't moving at all, just staring straight ahead into the corner. The strange thing was he was whispering something. It was barely audible, but I could make out a few words. "Help me. I don't want to stop." I froze. My son had never acted like this before. He wasn't this still. He wasn't this quiet. And why was he whispering? He was always so energetic, so full of life. This was nothing like the Jake I knew. I quickly shot a text to Rachel, asking what was going on. I needed to hear from her, to hear her say that everything was fine. But instead, I sat there staring at the video in horror, watching Jake's little body stand motionless in the corner. My stomach churned. A few minutes later, Rachel texted me back. "Sorry about that. I think he was just being silly messing around. He's fine now. Don't worry." But I didn't feel reassured. I felt scared. I tried to call Rachel again, but this time the phone just rang and rang. No answer. I tried several more times, still nothing. By the time I had received the second video, my anxiety was reaching a breaking point. I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I kept trying to call Rachel. I sent her several messages, asking her to pick up, to tell me what was going on with Jake. but all I got was silence in return. The second video came in almost exactly 30 minutes after the first. My hands were shaking as I opened it, my stomach a ball of dread. This time, Jake was no longer standing in the corner. He was in the middle of the room, and his back was still to the camera. But this time, he wasn't just standing still. His body was rigid, stiff as a board, and his head was tilted unnaturally to the side. He was whispering again, and the words made my blood run cold. "Help, I can't. I don't want to." It was the same as the first video, but something had changed. His voice was quieter now, like it wasn't entirely his own. There was something off about the way he spoke, something alien, something wrong. His face, or at least what I could see of it, was no longer the face of my son. It looked stretched, distorted, like it wasn't even his face anymore. The most chilling part, however, was his eyes. They were wide open, but there was nothing in them. They were blank, empty, like someone or something had taken whatever spark of life was in them. I felt my heart stop in my chest. Something wasn't right, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to get home. I grabbed my things, told my colleagues I had to leave immediately, and rushed out the door. I tried calling Rachel again, but there was still no answer. The feeling in my gut was turning into a gnawing, unbearable dread. The drive home felt like an eternity. Every red light, every stop sign, every car that slowed in front of me made the minutes drag on even longer. I couldn't stop thinking about Jake, about what was happening to him, and about the videos. The whispering, the empty eyes, none of it made sense. I kept replaying the video in my head, but every time I tried to come up with an explanation, I couldn't. A part of me told me to relax, that maybe Rachel was right, that kids do weird things sometimes. But every other part of me screamed that something supernatural, something dangerous, was happening to my son. When I finally pulled into the driveway, my hands were sweating. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, before I stepped out of the car and rushed inside. The house was eerily quiet. I felt a chill run down my spine as I made my way through the front door. Rachel was standing in the living room, smiling at me like nothing had happened. "Hey, everything's fine," she said with a bright, forced smile. "He's upstairs sleeping." I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. How could she look so calm? The videos, the way Jake had been acting, none of it seemed right. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel pointed toward the stairs. "He's sleeping upstairs. Just had a long day, I think." I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think about what I'd seen in those videos. But my instincts were telling me something was wrong. I quickly walked past Rachel and headed up the stairs. As I approached Jake's room, the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently, and there he was, lying on his bed, eyes closed, breathing steadily. But there was something about his face. It wasn't just the stillness that unnerved me. It was the way his features seemed almost too peaceful, too calm. His lips were slightly parted, and his face had a blank expression. Not the peaceful, content look of a child asleep, but something different, something unsettling. I stepped closer, trying not to wake him. But the closer I got, the more I felt that something was off. I stood there for a moment, just looking at him. This wasn't my son. It was the same body, but the soul seemed gone. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, staring at my son, watching him sleep. The stillness in the room was overwhelming, and the eerie sensation creeping down my spine intensified. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Who had I seen in the video? What was going on with Jake? Why did everything feel so wrong? I took another step closer, careful not to make a sound, my heart thumping painfully in my chest. I reached out to touch his forehead, hoping to feel the warmth of his skin, the familiar softness that belonged to him. But as my fingers made contact, a chill ran through my body, and I recoiled. His skin was cold, unnaturally cold. My stomach churned, and I felt a wave of nausea hit me. This was no longer just a simple case of a child acting strangely. This was something darker, something far beyond my understanding. I looked down at Jake's face one more time, desperate for an explanation, but nothing about the situation made sense. I couldn't shake the feeling that what I had seen in the video was real, that the child I had seen standing in the middle of the room earlier wasn't my son at all. I turned away from the bed and rushed back downstairs, my head spinning. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening to my family. Rachel was still in the living room, humming a soft tune, as if nothing had changed. I felt a jolt of anger, a deep frustration rising in me. How could she be so calm? Didn't she see what I saw? I grabbed my phone and unlocked it, scrolling through my messages. The second video was still there. I clicked it again, replaying the scene in my mind. Jake's face, his hollow eyes, the whispers, it all came rushing back. It wasn't just a bad dream. It was real. But then something happened. As the video played, the last few frames froze. The whispering from Jake became clearer, and as the camera zoomed in on his face, his lips formed words. Words I had never heard him speak before. "I'm not your son," the video echoed. Even though it wasn't part of the original footage, the voice on the screen was deep and distorted, unlike anything I'd ever heard. My blood ran cold, and I could barely breathe. My eyes widened as I rewound the video, hoping I had misheard it. But there it was again, the voice, clear as day. "I'm not your son." The chill in the air seemed to thicken, as if the house itself had become a prison, and I was trapped inside it. My mind raced. I couldn't think straight anymore. I needed to know what was going on. Was the real Jake still here? Or had something? Or someone replaced him? Before I could process it further, the phone vibrated in my hand. It was a message from Rachel. "Is everything okay? He's been acting so strange today. I'm starting to get worried." The words on the screen seemed to burn into my brain. Rachel knew something was wrong. She had to. I took the deep breath, my hands shaking. And then I typed out a reply. "Where are you? What did you do to him?" I stared at the phone, waiting for a reply. My fingers hovered above the screen, my mind torn between confronting her and trying to understand what was happening to my son. And then, as if on cue, the door to Jake's room creaked open behind me. I turned around slowly, my heart stopping for a moment. Standing there, framed in the doorway, was Jake. But it wasn't my Jake. Not anymore.